Hi, everybody. Dick Vitale. Hey, make sure you listen, man, to Locked On Blue Devils with J.J. Jackson. He's awesome, baby.
You are Locked On Blue Devils, your daily podcast on the Duke Blue Devils, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everybody, and welcome into another episode of the Locked On Blue Devils podcast. My name is JJ Jackson. So great to have you here with us on this Friday, April 14th, 2023. A lot to discuss going on in the Duke men's basketball world as we're getting excited for next season, all these roster decisions that have been made and announced going into next year. And who better to talk about all of that with than our good pal Brian Horace from Duke Blogger, who's going to join us here in a matter of moments. If you haven't done so already, please be sure to follow and subscribe to Locked On Blue Devils for free wherever you get your podcasts. We're available each and every day. You can watch the show on YouTube as well. Make sure you check us out over there. Hit that subscribe button. Follow us on Twitter at LO_Blue Devils. I'm on Twitter at _JJ_Jackson_. So show us some love. We appreciate you watching us each and every day. Without further ado, let me bring on my good pal, Brian Horace, who's back with us for the first time in quite some time. Brian, I hope that you're doing well. Thanks for being here today.
Thanks for having me, man. How are you?
I am quite well. Thank you for asking. Excited for this upcoming season. We were just talking, though, we've got a ways to go until real games will be played. There's part of me that still thinks about that Tennessee game and how the NCAA tournament shaped up with how great Duke was playing down the stretch. You really can play a lot of what-if hypotheticals with this past year's squad.
Oh, without a doubt. I mean, injuries here, a bad call here or there. I mean, it's very easy to play that what-if game, but future still looks bright.
What was the biggest difference for Duke down the stretch this season? Obviously, they go on this massive ACC title run following the no-call foul on Kyle Filipowski in that UVA game in Charlottesville. We haven't got a chance to connect. I'm curious, what was the biggest difference down the stretch?
I think it was a number of things. I think one, obviously moving Tyrese Proctor, to on the ball, and Jeremy Roach to off the ball so he could more, focus more on scoring the ball. I think also the emergence of Derek Lively. He was, defensively a menace and a lob threat, on the offensive end of the floor. I think the shooting of Dariq Whitehead was also a huge factor as well. I think, those few things I think really set, Duke on a path to get to where they got to.
And they got to a title. That's exactly where the Duke team got. Last night, we saw the Duke team have their annual banquet at the end of the year, recognizing the 2023 ACC champions. And while we're still hurt over the Tennessee game and the exit in the NCAA tournament, that squad always has a championship to reflect back on.
Without a doubt. I mean, they raised that banner, and they'll always have that. And, hopefully they can build upon that going into the next season for sure.
Yeah, really excited to see what this next year's squad looks like now that we've seen some decisions being made. Kyle Filipowski, the biggest one this week. So many people excited about it. 16 double-doubles this past season out there on the floor. I mean, when you think about Flip's freshman season, Brian, how would you evaluate it?
Yeah, I think obviously he had some physical trials here and there and some things that did not go his way. But overall, I mean, you couldn't ask for a better freshman season. I mean, he gave Duke all he had, and he was arguably their best player, for most of the season. He, along with obviously Jeremy Roach, and I think it's tough to see a world where he doesn't improve going into next season. And honestly, Duke is very lucky to be able to get him back, for a sophomore season. That doesn't really happen often at Duke. When you have a good freshman season, generally you're jumping ship, taking that NBA cash. But Flip said he wanted to stick around and leave, a bit more of a mark at Duke. And Jon Scheyer is very lucky to have that happen.
Yeah, Duke fans are lucky that we get to watch him wear that Duke jersey for yet another season. For the immediate impact, the immediate success we're seeing from the national perspective, so many people putting Duke as a preseason top 5 team, some even number 1 in the country going into the year. And we don't even know what the rest of this team's going to look like in regards to possible transfers coming in and that sort of thing. The Filipowski angle alone, Brian, for next year's team, how big of an impact is it that he is coming back?
Oh, it's huge. It's huge. It's, it's another year of experience, instead of having to fill that role with a freshman who, obviously they're always going to be hit or miss. You have a known entity. You have someone that is going to at very least be as productive as he was this past season, but you hope there's a sophomore jump as well. And, he's a guy that's been through some wars, and, that I think, along with a couple of other returnees, was probably the single biggest recruiting haul for Jon Scheyer, just getting, a sophomore season out of Flip.
No doubt. I'm so excited that he's going to get that sophomore season. And that, anytime you think about a player coming back for another season, improvements are bound to happen. Like, we will see a better version of Kyle Filipowski year in and year out, and night in and night out even. And his personality is one that I'm really excited to have coming back for the squad. Had a really cool video announcing his return. And then a little bit later on his Instagram feed, Filipowski put out 10 photos, titled the caption, "The Best of the Worst," and some of his just competitive, goofy faces that he was making throughout the game. And anybody that can laugh and have fun with themselves, like, I'm all for that. I saw Tyrese Proctor in the comments telling Flip that he was a meme for real on Instagram. So anybody that can have a lot of fun with themselves, I'm certainly that makes me happy.
It harkens back to when actual Jon Scheyer was at Duke, and
no kidding.
People were posting the Scheyer
comparison.
face. Yeah. The Scheyer face.
When you get competitive, you never know what that face is going to look like in those moments.
Something about that number 30.
Connection. Yeah, and their connection is deeper than just the jersey number, it appears, with the way they act and that sort of thing. All right, so Duke has a really good team going into next year. It certainly seems. Let's talk a little bit more about that after this next time out here on the program. Locked On Blue Devils here today is brought to you by our friends over at Built Bar. Are you looking for a delicious snack but don't want all the sugar and calories? Then you need the best tasting protein bar ever, Built. You got to try this. If you're like me and you want to make healthier snack choices, but you don't want to compromise on taste, I've got just the thing for you. Built Bars and Built Puffs. Built Bars are healthy and taste amazing. Seriously, they taste so amazing, you won't think that they're good for you, but they certainly are. And again, covered in 100% chocolate. You can now find these at your local Walmart or Sam's Club, and you can still get your specialty flavors online at Built.com. That's right. Head to the nearest Walmart, walk up to the pharmacy section, grab yourself a box of Built Bars. You can pick up a 4-bar box of cookies and cream, my personal favorite, at Walmart directly. Built Bar is a proud sponsor of Locked On Blue Devils. Moving forward here in today's episode of Locked On Blue Devils, JJ Jackson alongside my pal Brian Horace at Duke Blogger on Twitter. A couple of other decisions for sophomores coming back. We've got Tyrese Proctor and Mark Mitchell that announced they will be returning for their sophomore season. Let's talk Proctor first. What does it mean for Duke?
Well, again, I think it means everything. I think 2 years was always the plan, but obviously with the high profile end of the season for the Blue Devils, I think, it's another blessing for Scheyer to be able to get him to come back. I think, there's room for improvement, even though he had, a very good freshman season. There's room for improvement. And I think we'll see that, going into next year with, not only his decision-making, I think he'll shoot a lot better next year as well. I think a lot of things, for him are going to come together this next season.
Really excited to see what he could do that next year, right? The shooting percentage, like you alluded to, is something that you want to see continue to improve. Filipowski, even the same, right? Like, you think about three-point shooting, how pivotal it's been for Duke basketball over the years. You could argue, looking at the roster right now, not even forecasting freshmen coming in or transfers, I think you could make an argument that Proctor and Filipowski could be two of the guys up there in shot attempts for next season. And for Duke's success, the more efficient they are, I mean, that's common sense, the better the team is going to be able to play. And the three-point percentage numbers for both players is a direct area where we would love to see, and Duke would greatly benefit from their improvement.
Oh, without a doubt. I think, both guys are, I think they're both better shooters than they showed this season. I think going into next year, you know, obviously getting to know each other even a little better, knowing where, they want the ball in spots. And I think with Proctor, his instincts are very good as a passer as well. And I think, that's going to aid, in not only Flip but other guys getting, really good looks at the 3-point attempts.
Yeah. Mark Mitchell is the other sophomore returning for another season. You talk about 3-point shooting. That's not the first thing that comes to mind for his game. We often talk about the line drive shots that he had. They don't look the best, but for a while he was one of the top percentage guys for Duke this season. Beyond the 3-point shooting, what does his return mean?
Oh, I think, it's another, huge benefit for Duke. I mean, he's probably one of the guys with the highest ceilings on the team. I think, athletically, I'm sure he'll make a jump. He's a guy with the highest motor, I think, on the team, along with Flip. He gives them that dynamic wing. And I look for him to be a better finisher next year. I think, confidence, will be one of the more improved features of his game. And, I think his shot will improve as well. I think, obviously, more looks for him, I think will come with Proctor being back at the point guard spot. But I think Mitchell, he's the guy, he's the glue guy. He's the guy that I think, and especially defensively. I mean, he was one of Duke's, if not Duke's better, best defenders along with Lively. And I think that's the sort of the unsung part of his game. And I think he brings is just that tenacious defense.
Yeah, a lot of people wonder if Olivier Kamakwa would have the game that he had for Tennessee had Mark Mitchell been in there. The assignment could have been in place. Again, that's a whole nother what-if topic for another day. But with Mark, the defense, you're right, Brian, is something that we do talk about immediately right away. The other thing I love to remind people of is just his scoring effort and the fact that, we had that stat running. What was it? 17-1, 18-1, whatever it was for Duke this season when we saw Mark Mitchell score in double figures.
Exactly.
Why was that the case? That's the one follow-up that I personally haven't discussed with anyone. Why do you find it that Duke was so overwhelmingly effective when Mark Mitchell, of all players, reached that double-digit scoring threshold?
I think he's a guy that when he does score, it's more of it's a gravy situation. He's not necessarily looked on to score. But when he is scoring, generally it's off of putbacks. He's getting rebounds and going back up with it. He's driving the ball
Great point.
into the foul line, but he's also hitting those threes. He hit some pretty clutch threes, for Duke this season as well. So I think when you have other guys coming to the plate putting what they normally put in, and you get 9, 10, 11 from him, it just takes Duke to that next level. And it's another guy that the defense has to account for.
Because Mark is not a guy that's going to be there creating his own shot. You're leaving it up for the shot creators of last year's squad, whether it be Roach or Proctor, Filipowski even. And then when you do get someone who's just there to fill in their role, yeah, the gravy element to it. I think that's perfectly right. I think you're exactly right. Yeah, excited to see what Mark Mitchell can do going into next season for sure. A couple of sophomores made the decision to not have a sophomore season, I should say, in Derek Whitehead and Derek Lively II. Are you like the rest of the Duke online basketball community in that you assumed that would be the direction that they went?
Oh, I think that was a good assumption before they even stepped foot in Durham. Those guys were.
We've had that one for a while, yeah.
First rounders, and I think Lively would have been even more impressive if he hadn't gotten injured, and I say the same thing for Whitehead. I think injuries curtailed their progress, but I think both really turned up that progress starting middle to late season and started to really show why they were top 5 guys coming in from high school. Lively, that that ceiling is just massively high for him, considering the injuries he's had and the role he was asked to play. He's just, the sky's the limit for him. And obviously Whitehead with his shooting didn't come in with a reputation as a really good shooter, but he really worked on that part of his game. And that's one of the, the aspects of, player development that people don't really understand is that Whitehead came in with more of a reputation as a slasher and an alpha guy. And when he did get injured, that role had to change. And, working with Jay Lucas and the other members of the staff, acquiring that ability to hit those threes and to do it regularly and with, good efficiency, I think that really put, in addition to what he did in high school, him, put him in the eyes of the NBA guys. It's like, okay, wait a minute, this guy is a little more than just this slasher guy, and then that part of his game will come back, to him as well. But adding this extra feature is just, it's another, tool in his toolbox.
Yeah, Brian, when we talk Whitehead specifically, here I am. I'm talking three-point shooting all the time, my favorite. You felt the best throughout the year when Whitehead was the one getting those. It just felt automatic, like it was so smooth. And to think, to your point, that that's not what we were expecting, right? The alpha mentality is what I certainly like, a downhill ball in hand type player. And yet it turned into a little bit more of a spot up role for Whitehead. And he absolutely excelled on the offensive end for Duke.
Yeah, I remember when Nate James was a coach at Duke, he called those shots, money makers or contract makers. If you can hit those shots, and ability to what he already brought to the table, physically in terms of his build, his size, his ability off the bounce, those types of things, in addition to what he can do now from beyond the arc. I mean, he's going to be a killer in the league.
Going to make a lot of money, that's for sure. So excited to see where those guys end up. Absolutely. Taking a look at next year's squad. Again, we think about these decisions that have to be made. Jeremy Roach has declared for the NBA draft, still does have the opportunity to come back maintaining his college eligibility. What are you hearing? What does your gut tell you on this one, Brian?
My gut tells me, he'll be back. But again, those things are always fluid. I mean, he has the,
Yeah. You could wake up tomorrow feeling totally different.
It can be completely different, exactly. And obviously he'll get his feedback. He'll see where he stacks up against the other guys, that are declaring for the draft. In the end, it may just come down to the fact that, like, being at Duke it's a high profile place. You get the best of everything. If he does end up staying in the draft, going to the G League, it's a whole different ball game, and it's not an easy life. It really isn't. I mean, you go to those G League games, and it's not a lot of people there, and there's they're not taking care of you like they do in college. So it'll come down to, like, am I ready to get my pro career started? Don't want to spend another year in the sort of the lap of luxury that is college athletics. So it's a tough decision, and I don't think he can go wrong either way, honestly.
Yeah, it'd be big for him to come back for the Duke team. They do already have a ton of ball handlers going into next season in that backcourt, which is great. That's definitely going to be a chess piece, a chess puzzle for that coaching staff to sort of figure out how to allocate the ball distribution and that sort of thing. But that's what they're paid the big dollars for, and we'll have plenty of time to discuss those things in the coming days and weeks. Looking at this year's team, again, we're just kind of forecasting what next year's roster could look like. We also have other scholarship players needing to make decisions, I reckon, in terms of Ryan Young has that extra year of COVID-19 eligibility. He very quickly let the world know that he would be playing a sixth season of college basketball. And then now we're living in a world where players like Jaden Schutt and Jalen Blakes and Christian Reeves, you assume they're going to have to make some form of a public statement whether or not they're going to be back. Jon Scheyer was on radio in the Raleigh-Durham area earlier in the week, mentioned those three players specifically, almost as if they're expected to return for this upcoming season. So what are you hearing in regards to that when you continue to build out the depth of next year's squad?
Yeah, I think those guys, at least the majority of them, I think, will be back. It's hard to say, like I said earlier, things are fluid. They change on a dime. You never know, Monday you wake up feeling one way, Tuesday you may wake up feeling another. But I think those guys are on a path to playing time if they stick around. It's just a matter of, hopefully they understand and share the vision, that the staff has for them, and that, hey, we're trying to get you where you're going to be not only productive for us, but also productive for yourselves. And I think at very least two of those three will stick around. It's just hard to say.
So the transfer portal of it all, and players possibly joining Duke, not leaving Duke to enter the transfer portal. But that's obviously something that's going to pick up here as we get moving towards May. We know Caden Shedrick from Virginia a year ago, from the Holly Springs area originally, right there in Raleigh-Durham. And he's a candidate to transfer into Duke. Are you hearing any other names? What do you expect the transfer portal to look like for the Blue Devils?
Yeah, I haven't heard a lot, in terms of names. We do know Duke's looking, for a, possible replacement for the production that Derek Lively gave them, a rebounder, a lob threat, rim runner, a guy that can defend in space. Shedrick was mentioned as having visited Duke, I believe. At very least, there was some mutual interest. Hadn't heard a lot of names yet. It's still, somewhat early in the portal process, I think, for Duke. So, there are guys mentioned that aren't in the portal yet that I won't mention, just out of respect for their
Sure.
situations. But I think they will acquire someone. It's just a matter of who someone is. It's going to be a process.
Going to be the big question. Well, it's always great to catch up with you, spend a little time talking about Duke basketball. You do such a remarkable job following the team, covering the team. Again, all of your work on Twitter at DukeBlogger, DukeBlogger.com. Give me a moment here, Brian, if you will. Promote your work, what you got going on, and where people, again, can find that.
Yeah, they can find me on Twitter at DukeBlogger. Everything I do on the web starts there. Obviously, DukeBlogger.com. Everything I do there gets translated and moved over to Twitter as well. So, let's come have a conversation. Let's talk.
I love that. Well, thanks for being on the podcast today, Brian. We'll do this again sometime soon, okay?
Sure. Appreciate it, man.
All right. That's my pal, Brian Horace, joining us on today's episode of Locked On Blue Devils, and that's going to bring our show to a close. Once again, please make sure that you follow us wherever you get your podcasts. Leave us a 5-star rating and review. So excited to continue to talk about the Duke basketball offseason with you. That's going to do it for today's show. As always, go Duke. My name is JJ Jackson. Thank you and good day.